Kevin came on a Saturday. He didn't call first. That was the thing that told her everything. Kevin, who called on Sundays between brunch and his startup and his girlfriend. Kevin, who scheduled his life in 30-minute increments and color-coded his calendar and had once rescheduled a visit to Gloria because a pitch meeting had moved, arrived on a Saturday morning without warning. His car was in the driveway at 9:47 a.m., and Gloria was standing in the kitchen in her robe making tea when she heard the knock and looked through the window and saw him. She stood very still for a moment. She was 6.5 months pregnant. There was no managing that. There was no wardrobe that concealed it, no posture that minimized it, no version of opening the door that did not include the fact of her body announcing itself before she said a word. She had known this conversation was coming. She had been preparing for it in the way she prepared for difficult things, by telling herself she was ready, and then discovering on the day that ready was not a destination, but a direction, and she had been walking toward it and had not arrived. She opened the door. Kevin stood on the porch in a gray t-shirt and dark jeans, a weekend bag over his shoulder, his car keys still in his hand. He was 35 years old, and he had her cheekbones and her stubbornness and the particular stillness she had watched him develop over 3 decades, from a screaming 7-pound baby into a man who could sit in a room with a crisis and not move a muscle until he understood it completely. He had driven 4 hours from Birmingham without calling, because calling would have given her time to prepare, and he had decided, apparently, that she had prepared enough. He looked at her. He looked at her stomach. He looked at her face. He said nothing for a long moment. Kevin's silences were never empty. She had told him that once, had said Denise's silences are loaded and yours are empty, and he had said that's because I'm actually thinking, Mama, not just feeling. And she had laughed and known it was true. This silence was neither empty nor loaded. It was the silence of a man recalibrating, rearranging what he thought he knew about his mother into the shape of what was actually true. And the rearranging was visible on his face the way it is visible on the faces of people who feel things fully but have learned not to say them immediately. He was his mother's son. "Come in," Gloria said. She stepped back from the door. He came in. He set his bag down in the entryway, not the living room, the entryway, the way he had always set his bag in the entryway since he was 8 years old. The habit of a child who had been taught that bags did not belong in the living room and had carried the lesson into adulthood the way children carry the rules that were enforced with love rather than anger. He was 35 years old and he still put his bag in the entryway. She felt the love of him so sharply it was almost pain. She went to the kitchen. He followed. She poured him a cup of tea without asking because he drank tea now, had started in his late 20s when the startup culture and the coffee anxiety had collided. And she knew this because she paid attention to her children the way she paid attention to everything, completely, without announcing it. She set the cup on the table and sat down across from where he would sit and put her hands in her lap and waited. He sat. He looked at his tea. He looked at her. He said, "How long?" 6.5 months, she said. He nodded slowly. He picked up the teacup, put it down without drinking. "How long have you known?" "Since June." "It's November, Mama." "I know. That's 5 months, Kevin." 5 months, he said again. Not with anger, with the specific precision of a man who needed to say the number out loud to make it real, the way engineers say numbers, the way her son said numbers, like they were facts that needed to be established before anything else could happen. "I know," Gloria said. He was quiet for a moment. "Denise knew before me." "Yes." "Lorraine knew before me." "Yes." His jaw tightened. Not the anger jaw, the controlled jaw. The jaw of a man choosing not to say the thing he wants to say because he has decided the more important thing is to understand first. How long has Lorraine known? Since July. 4 months. Kevin. He looked at her. His warm brown eyes, her eyes, the eyes she had given him along with the stubbornness and the stillness. were doing something she had not seen them do since the night she had called him to say she and Raymond were separating. He had been 23 years old, and he had sat on the other end of the phone in his apartment in Atlanta and been very still, and then he had said, "Okay, Mama, what do you need?" Not what happened or whose fault or how could you. Okay, what do you need? He was 35 years old now, and he was sitting in her kitchen in Huntsville on a Saturday morning with an untouched cup of tea, and he was being very still, and she could see him deciding the same thing. Not what happened, not whose fault, not the 5 months or the 4 months or the fact that Lorraine and Denise had known before him. He was deciding to set all of that aside and ask the thing that actually mattered. "Who is he?" Kevin said. "His name is Park Jun-ho. He's Korean. He's 30 years old. He's a sound engineer at Cummings Research Park." Gloria said it the way she had said it to every person who had a right to know, flat and complete, without managing the landing. The information and nothing else. The truth without the apology wrapped around it. "I've been seeing him for over a year. He knows about the baby. His mother has met me." She paused. "He loves me." Kevin was very still. "He's 30, he said. "Yes." "You're 60. "Yes. I know what it is, Kevin." Gloria held his gaze. "I'm not asking you to understand it immediately. I'm asking you to sit with it." He looked at the table. His hands were around the teacup now, both of them. The way he held things when he was thinking, surrounding the object, containing it, the habit of a man who processed the world through his hands. 35 years old, and he still held his teacup the same way he had held his juice cup at age 4, both hands, grip of complete focus. "Does he make you happy?" Kevin asked. He said it to the table, not to her. "Yes," Gloria said. He was quiet for a long time. The ceiling fan turned. Through the window, Oakwood Avenue was doing its Saturday morning business. A neighbor walking a dog, a car reversing out of a driveway, a child on a bicycle wobbling past with the uncertain confidence of someone who has recently learned something and has not yet learned it well enough to stop thinking about it. "You should have told me," Kevin said. Still to the table. "I know, not because I would have stopped you." He looked up. His eyes were wet, which she had not expected. Kevin did not cry, had not cried since Raymond left, had not cried at the retirement party, had not cried when she had heard his voice catch on the Saturday phone call weeks ago. He was 35 years old, and his eyes were wet in her kitchen, and he was still being very still with both hands around the teacup. "I would not have stopped you, Mama. He stopped. "Tried again. I'm your son. I should have known. Not from Denise. Not after Lorraine. Not when you're 6.5 months pregnant, and I can see it the moment you open the door." He pressed his lips together. "You should have trusted me with it." The words landed the way true words always land in this kitchen, like something dropped from a height, clean and final and unavoidable. Gloria looked at her son. This man she had made? This man who had her cheekbones and her stubbornness and her stillness, and who had driven 4 hours on a Saturday without calling because he had decided she had prepared enough and he was right, she had? She had been preparing for 5 months, and the preparation had been its own kind of cowardice. The cowardice of a woman who was so afraid of disappointing the people she loved most that she had protected herself by not giving them the chance to surprise her. Kevin had just surprised her. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was afraid you'd look at me differently." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "You're my mother. You're having a baby at 60 with a man half your age, and I drove 4 hours to see you because I was worried, and because I love you, and because whatever you think I would think, you were wrong." He picked up the teacup, finally drank. "Okay?" She felt her eyes overflow. Not the controlled crying, not the ugly crying, the quiet kind. The kind that comes when you have been braced against something for so long that when it doesn't happen, your body releases the bracing, and the release feels like water. "Okay," she said. They sat in the kitchen for a long time. He asked about the doctor. She told him about Dr. Adeyemi, about the high-risk classification, about the weekly monitoring, about the fact that the baby was healthy and strong and apparently already opinionated about sleep schedules based on the kicks that arrived reliably at 2 in the morning. He laughed at that, a real one, surprised out of him, short and warm. He asked about Junho. She told him about the library, about the biography of Miyazaki, about the sweet tea from the vending machine. She told him about Rome, about the cobblestone alley and the infrastructure conversation, and the balcony and the "I love you" said as a dependent clause. She told him about the dinner with Park Mi-rae and the question and the answer and the kimchi. He listened the way he always listened, completely, without interruption, surrounding the information with both hands, the way he surrounded the teacup, taking it in fully before responding. When she finished, he said, "He called you the whole building." "Yes," Gloria said. Kevin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Good, because you are." She looked at her son. He was looking at her stomach with an expression she recognized because she had seen it twice before. When Denise had shown him the ultrasound of the twins, and he had stood very still and then said quietly, "They look like little aliens," and then immediately, before anyone could respond, but in a good way, the expression of a man arriving at something he did not plan to feel and finding that the feeling is larger than the plan. "What's the due date?" he asked. "February 14th, she said. He looked up. "Valentine's Day? I didn't choose it." He shook his head slowly. "Only you, Mama." He picked up the teacup again. "I want to meet him. I know. Soon, before the baby, he needs to sit across from me, and I need to look at him." Gloria felt something settle in her chest. Not the relief of approval. She had stopped needing approval when she threw away the Amalfi Coast brochure. Something different. The relief of being known. Of having been afraid that her son would look at her differently and discovering that differently was not less but more present, more honest, more fully in the room with who she actually was. "I'll set it up," she said. "And Mama." He set the teacup down. He looked at her directly with her own eyes in his face. "Next time?" She pressed her lips together. "I know." She reached across the table and put her hand over his. Her dark brown hand over his dark brown hand. The same skin, the same cheekbones, the same stubbornness that had gotten them both into and out of more things than either of them could count. "Don't protect me from you. Let me be your son." She held his hand. He let her. Outside Oakwood Avenue continued its Saturday. The child on the bicycle came back past the window, wobbling less than before. The uncertain confidence becoming something more like the real thing. The ceiling fan turned. The baby kicked once, decisive and clear, as if registering the presence of its uncle through the wall of its world. Gloria put her other hand on her stomach. Kevin watched her do it. Something moved across his face, the full weight of it arriving at last. The 6.5 months, and the 2 a.m. kicks, and the Valentine's Day due date, and the 30-year-old Korean man who had called her the whole building. He reached across the table and put his hand over hers on her stomach. Both their hands there, dark brown and warm, and his mother's hands and his. 3 generations of the same skin in the Alabama Saturday morning. They stayed like that for a long time. Neither of them said anything. Neither of them needed to. Atlanta was Denise's territory, and everyone knew it. Gloria had known it since the day Denise had moved there at 26 with her then boyfriend Marcus, and proceeded to build a life so deliberate and so fully realized that it had the quality of a manifesto. The house in Decatur, with its wraparound porch and its vegetable garden and its color-coded mudroom where the twins' backpacks hung on labeled hooks. The Sunday dinners that started at 2 and went until 6. The neighborhood WhatsApp group that Denise moderated with the efficiency of a woman who had grown up watching her mother run a classroom and had taken notes. Atlanta was where Denise had decided who she was going to be and had become it. And when you walked into her house, you walked into the full force of that becoming. Gloria had always been proud of it. Today, sitting in the passenger seat of Junho's Hyundai on I-20 East, with the Alabama landscape giving way to Georgia, she was also slightly terrified of it. Junho was driving. He had insisted on driving. which she had let him because his hands on the wheel gave him something to do with the energy that had been moving through him since they left Huntsville at 7 that morning. He was 7 months into knowing about the baby and 3 months into being known by everyone who needed to know, and he was still, in quiet moments, the man who had bounced his knee at gate B7 before she put her hand on it. The nerves had not gone away. They had just become more sophisticated, less obvious, more internal. The nerves of a man who had learned to carry them rather than display them. She watched his hands on the wheel, the thin black cord bracelet on his left wrist, the slight tension at his knuckles that relaxed when she put her hand on the center console and he moved his right hand to cover hers without looking away from the road. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Enormous," she said. He almost smiled. "That's not what I meant. I know." She looked at the Georgia road ahead of them. "I'm fine. Gloria, I'm genuinely fine." She paused. Denise is not Lorraine. Lorraine came in ready to find fault and found less than she expected. Denise is coming in ready to love you and looking for a reason to trust it. That's a different evaluation. Is that better or worse? Better. Gloria looked at him. Harder, but better. Lorraine needed evidence. Denise needs to feel something. You can't prepare for feeling. You just have to show up and be real and let her feel what she feels. He was quiet for a moment. What about Marcus? What about him? I've never heard you describe Marcus. Gloria considered this. Marcus is 38, she said. He played college football. He sells medical equipment. He loves Denise with the specific devotion of a man who knows he married up and has never taken it for granted. He coached the Twins soccer team last season, even though he knows nothing about soccer. He makes a very good jerk chicken. She paused. He is also the kind of man who will form an opinion about you in the first 10 minutes, and that opinion will be the one he keeps. Junho absorbed this. So I have 10 minutes. You have less. You have the time between the front door and the moment he decides to offer you a drink. If he offers you a drink in the first 5 minutes, you're fine. If he waits, he's still deciding. What do I do while he's deciding? Be real, Gloria said again. Don't perform. Don't try to be what you think he wants. Marcus has a very accurate detector for performance. He played football. He spent 4 years in locker rooms. He knows what men look like when they're managing an impression, and he doesn't trust it. Junho nodded. He was quiet for a while. The Georgia landscape rolled past the windows, pine trees, and red clay, and the particular flatness of the land between Alabama and Atlanta that has a beauty in it if you are not in a hurry. Then she said, "The Twins. What about them? Get on the floor." He looked at her. "What?" "When they come at you, get on the floor. Don't stay in the chair. Fully on the floor and let them come to you." He stared at the road. On the floor, in my good clothes." Junho, okay. He nodded slowly. Floor. She looked at him. He was going to forget. She could see it, the nerves of the morning, and the drink test, and the Marcus evaluation, and the floor instruction all stacking on top of each other. Too many variables for a man who was trying very hard not to fail a test he had been told was not a test. "Junho," she said. The floor is the only instruction that matters. Everything else you'll figure out, but if you forget the floor, nothing else will recover." He looked at her. "Just the floor. Just the floor." He nodded. She watched him file it somewhere accessible. The way he filed everything she said, not in the careful archive of a man managing information, but in the immediate working memory of a man who understood that what she said was useful and treated it accordingly. They drove the rest of the way, mostly in silence. At some point outside of Atlanta, she felt the baby kick, long and rolling, the whole body movement of a baby running out of room, and she put her hand on her stomach and thought about Denise's house, and the wraparound porch, and the labeled hooks, and the Sunday dinners, and the empty chair. Not infrastructure, she thought, visible. From here, She was still thinking it when the Decatur neighborhood appeared through the windshield and Jun-ho found the parking and turned off the engine and sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel in the way he had sat at. Gate B7 before she put her hand on his knee. She put her hand on his knee. It stopped. "I know," she said. He turned to look at her. "I love you. I know that too," she said. "Now get out of the car. And remember the floor." He got out of the car. She followed, the 7 months choreography, the hand on the roof, and the stages. He did not help. She had not asked. They walked up to Denise's porch together. Denise opened the door before they reached the porch steps. She was 38 years old, and she had Gloria's jaw and her gap between her teeth, the particular way of standing that said, "I have been expecting you, and I have been preparing, and I am ready," that she had been doing since she was 11 years old, and had designated herself the person in charge of preparing for sings. She was wearing a soft burgundy wrap dress, her natural hair down and full around her face, gold earrings. She looked exactly like herself. No performance, no armor. Just Denise at her front door, looking at the man who was going to be her mother's baby's father for the first time. She looked at him the way Park Mi-rae had looked at Gloria. Not hostile, not warm. Just looking. Jun-ho met her eyes and did not look away. Then Denise looked at Gloria and her expression did something complex and layered. The love and the relief and the still present hurt of having been told second, and the particular emotion of seeing her mother 7 months pregnant in a way that was undeniable and real and right there on her porch. And then she said, "Mama," and opened her arms. Gloria walked up the porch steps and into her daughter's arms. Denise held her, not briefly, for a real moment, the kind of hug that has weight behind it. Gloria felt her daughter's hands on her back, felt the warmth of her, smelled the familiar vanilla and shea butter that Denise had worn since college, and thought, "This is what I almost protected myself out of. This. Right here." They went inside. The house was warm and bright and smelled like the jerk chicken Marcus had started at 9 that morning, the slow-cooked kind, the kind that announces itself through the whole house. The mudroom had the labeled hooks and the twins' backpacks and a pair of Marcus's enormous sneakers that had not made it to their designated spot. The living room was exactly the vision Denise had stood in among the boxes and described the sectional sofa and the gallery wall and the coffee table books, and the particular order of a home that is lived in fully by people who love being in it. Marcus came out of the kitchen. He was exactly as Gloria had described. Him, broad-shouldered, warm-faced, the particular ease of a man in his own home that comes from knowing every corner of it. He was wearing a gray Morehouse sweatshirt and dark jeans, and he was holding a wooden spoon because he had come from the stove. He looked at Jun-ho. Jun-ho looked at Marcus. There was a moment. The specific moment of two men in the same room registering each other without the benefit of a script. Marcus said, "You're Jun-ho." "Yes," Jun-ho said. Marcus nodded. "You want some water? Coffee?" 3 seconds. "Coffee would be great," Jun-ho said. "Thank you." Marcus nodded and went back to the kitchen. Jun-ho followed Gloria and Denise into the living room. He did not look at Gloria. He did not need to. He had felt the shoulder relax. Marcus came back with the coffees, set one in front of Jun-ho, sat in the armchair across from the sofa where Jun-ho was sitting. Denise was in the kitchen doing something that sounded like it did not actually need doing, which meant she had found a reason to leave the room and was listening from the hallway. Marcus said, "You work in sound?" "Yes." "Cummings Research Park? Recording and production. You like it?" It was not a question. Jun-ho looked at him. "Yes. I've wanted to do it since I was 12. My father had a record collection. Korean jazz, mostly. He used to let me sit with him while he listened and tell him what I heard. Not what the song was about, what I actually heard. The physics of it." Marcus looked at him. "What did you hear?" "Space," Jun-ho said. "Between the notes. My father said that's where the music lives, not the notes. The space between them." Marcus was quiet for a moment. He turned the coffee cup in his hand the way Kevin turned the teacup, both hands, surrounding the object, the habit of a man who processed things through his grip. Then he said, "Your father. Is he passed 4 years ago," Junho said. Marcus nodded. "I'm sorry. Thank you." They sat for a moment in the specific quiet of two men who have both lost something and have recognized it in each other without planning to. Marcus was still looking at his coffee cup. Then he said, "She told me about the dinner. With your mother." He paused. She asked her if she had enough left. Gloria had told Marcus about the dinner. Junho had not known that. He absorbed it. "She did," Junho said, and she answered it. "I know," Marcus said. "Denise cried when she told me." He looked up. "My wife doesn't cry at things. She processes, and she plans, and she acts." He held Junho's gaze. She cried at that answer. Junho held Marcus's gaze and did not fill the space with words because the space did not need words. Then Amara arrived at full velocity. Gloria had said they would come fast, and she had. "I've been right." Amara stopped when she saw Junho, tilted her head. "Are you the baby's daddy?" "Amara," Denise said from somewhere she had clearly been listening. "What?" "It's what you said." Junho set down his coffee cup. He looked at Amara. He looked at the floor. He got on the floor. Full cross-legged sit, right there on Denise's living room rug in his white shirt and dark jeans. At eye level with a 5-year-old who had asked him the most direct question anyone in Atlanta had managed to ask since he walked through the door. Marcus watched him do it. Something moved across Marcus's face. He looked at Gloria standing in the doorway. She met his eyes. He said nothing, picked up his coffee, looked back at the floor where Junho was introducing himself to his daughters. "Yes," Junho said to Amara. "I am." Amara considered this with the gravity of a 5-year-old confronting a philosophical proposition. Then she sat down on the floor in front of him. Aisha sat down beside her sister with the reflexive solidarity of a twin who goes where her twin goes, regardless of the reason. "What's your name?" Amara said. "Junho. That's a funny name." "Amara," Denise said again. "My name is funny too," Junho said. "Amara is from the Igbo word for grace. That's not funny at all." "That's beautiful." Amara stared at him. "How do you know that?" "I looked it up when I found out I was going to meet you." Amara turned to Aisha. "He looked us up," she said, with the tone of a person delivering significant news. Aisha looked at Junho. "What does my name mean?" "Aisha means she who lives. It's Arabic." Aisha absorbed this. "She who lives," she repeated to herself, testing the weight of it. Gloria stood in the doorway of Denise's living room, watching her boyfriend sit cross-legged on the floor with her twin granddaughters, and felt something in her chest that she did not have a word. 4. Not pride. Larger than pride. The specific feeling of watching someone you love do the exact right thing in the exact right moment in a way you could not have coached or predicted, a thing that comes only from who they actually are. Denise appeared beside her. She was watching the floor too. "He did his research," Denise said quietly. "Yes," Gloria said. Marcus came from the kitchen with 2 coffees. He stopped in the doorway beside Gloria and looked at the floor. Junho was now showing Aisha something on his phone. He looked at Gloria. He said quietly, so only she could hear. He got on the floor. Gloria looked at Marcus. "Yes," she said. Marcus nodded, sipped his coffee, looked at Junho again with the expression of a man updating his evaluation in real time. Lunch was jerk chicken and rice and peas and fried plantains and a green salad that the twins refused to eat and Denise refused to argue about because some battles are not worth the Saturday. They sat around Denise's dining table, the 6 of them, the twins in their booster seats, Marcus at one end, Denise at the other, Gloria and Junho on one side, the empty chair on the other side that was always the empty chair. The one where Denise set a place out of habit every Sunday, even though the person it had been set for had not sat in it since the summer. It was Gloria's chair. From the Sunday dinners before the pregnancy, before Rome, before everything. Denise had set it empty out of habit and had not said anything about it, and Gloria had not said anything about it, and the empty chair sat between the twins with the particular presence of something that is not gone but has changed its present. Nature. Marcus asked Junho about his work. Junho answered directly and with the specific enthusiasm of a man who genuinely loved what he did, talking about the physics of sound and the architecture of a recording session and the difference between analog warmth and digital precision in a way that made Marcus lean forward slightly because Marcus was an engineer by training even. If medical equipment was his industry and the language of systems was a language he spoke natively, Denise watched this happen. Gloria watched Denise watch this happen. Aisha spilled her juice. The table absorbed the spill with the practiced calm of a table that had absorbed many spills. Junho moved his plate before Denise could reach across and handed Aisha his napkin without being asked. Aisha took it without ceremony and mopped her placemat. Amara watched this exchange with her head tilted at the angle she used when she was cataloging something. "You're fast," Amara told Junho. He looked at her. "Sound engineers have to be fast." "If you miss a note, it's gone." Amara nodded seriously. "I'll be fast too," she said, with the certainty of a child who has decided to add a skill to her repertoire. After lunch, Marcus took the twins to the backyard. The kitchen cleared. Junho stood and began collecting plates, and Denise watched him do it with the expression of a woman who has been building a verdict and keeps finding the evidence pointing in an inconvenient direction. She looked at Gloria. Gloria looked at Denise. "Come help me with the dishes," Denise said. The three of them stood at Denise's sink, Junho washing, Gloria drying, Denise putting away, a choreography they arrived at without discussion. Denise said, without turning from the cabinet, he looked up their names. "Yes," Gloria said. Before he came, he looked up what their names meant. "Yes." Denise put a bowl away. "He didn't do it to impress me. He did it because he actually wanted to know." Gloria did not respond. This was not a question. Denise closed the cabinet. She turned and looked at Junho, who was washing a pot with the focused attention he gave to everything. She said, "Junho." He looked up. She said, "If you hurt her." She said it flat and clean and without decoration, the way Gloria had always said the difficult things, the inheritance of a daughter who had been watching her mother speak truth for 38 years and had learned the language. "If you hurt her, I will not be the kind of person you want to have as an enemy." Junho looked at Denise for a moment. Then he said, "I know." He paused. "I've already hurt her. Not badly. But I've been a coward in ways I'm not going to be a coward again. And I know the difference between the hurting that comes from being human and the hurting that comes from being careless. I won't be careless." Denise looked at him for a long time. The kitchen was very quiet. From the backyard, they could hear Marcus and the twins. Denise said, "She called me from Rome. She told me everything. She said his name and his age and the baby and all of it." She paused. She said, "You make her feel less tired." She looked at Gloria. "I've been watching my mother be tired for 30 years. I didn't know that's what it was until she said it like that. Just less tired." Gloria looked at her daughter. Denise's eyes were wet. She pressed her lips together and did not let them overflow because she was Denise, and Denise controlled her crying the way Gloria controlled hers, the inheritance going both directions. "He makes you less tired, Mama," Denise said. "I can see it. You look different than you looked before Rome. You look like yourself, not the teacher self, not the capable self, yourself." Gloria looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she said, "I know." Denise made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sob, and was exactly what it sounds like when a daughter and a mother understand each other completely for the first time without either of them having planned. She crossed the kitchen and hugged Gloria, not the careful hug of a daughter managing her emotions. The real kind, both arms, her face against her mother's shoulder. The 38 years of it pressing through the embrace, and Gloria held her the way she had held her when she was small, completely. without reservation. Over Denise's shoulder, she could see Junho. He had turned back to the sink. He was washing the last pot. His shoulders were slightly raised, the posture of a man holding himself very carefully still so that he does not interrupt something that is not his to interrupt. The thin black cord bracelet on his wrist moved as he worked. He was washing the pot he had not dirtied. He was giving them the kitchen the way he had given Gloria the Roman balcony. Stepping back from what was not his and staying for what was, after the dishes, Junho went to the backyard with Marcus and the twins. Gloria and Denise sat at the kitchen table with 2 cups of tea Denise made without asking. Denise wrapped both hands around her cup the way Kevin wrapped both hands around his cup, and Gloria thought, I gave them both that. That is mine in them, Mama, Denise said. When the baby comes, she paused. I know I said I wasn't ready to be the babysitter. I know I said figure it out yourself. She looked at her tea. I want to take that back. Gloria looked at her daughter. Not as the babysitter, Denise said quickly. Not as the automatic resource you call when you need coverage, but as the sister. The baby's sister. I want to be present. I want to be in it. She looked up. The twins are going to have an uncle or an aunt, she said, and her voice caught on the words. An uncle or an aunt. Who is Korean and black and Alabama and all of it. She pressed her lips together. I don't want to miss that. Gloria reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. You won't miss it, she said. Promise? I've already made you one promise from Rome, Gloria said. I'm keeping this one too. Denise nodded, squeezed her mother's hand, looked at the table. Then she said, He washed the pot he didn't dirty. Gloria smiled. I know. That's a man who was raised right. His mother packed Giga across 14 hours of ocean for him. He was raised very right. Denise looked at her. I want to meet her. His mother. One thing at a time, baby. I know. She squeezed Gloria's hand again. But eventually, Gloria confirmed. Outside through the kitchen window, they could see the backyard. Marcus was attempting to explain the rules of a game the twins had invented that appeared to have no fixed rules. His large frame crouched at twin height, his expression the patient bewilderment of a man who has learned that 5-year-olds do not modify their games for the convenience of adults. And beside him, Junho, cross-legged on the grass in his white shirt and dark jeans, the thin black cord bracelet visible even from here, listening to Amara explain the inexplicable rules with the full, focused attention of a man who had looked up what their names meant before he came and was now learning the shape of the family he was joining. The afternoon light was going golden over the Atlanta backyard. Amara was gesturing. Aisha was nodding. Marcus had given up understanding the rules and was simply accepting them. Junho laughed at something Amara said. The real one, the belly one, surprised out of him. It carried through the kitchen window. Denise looked at the window, then at Gloria, then back at the window. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, Mama. Gloria looked at her daughter, her firstborn, the one who had her jaw and her gap between her teeth and her grandmother's vision, the one who had said bring him to Atlanta and had meant it and had let the meaning be true. She picked up her tea. It was the right temperature. Denise always got the temperature right. She drank it and watched the Atlanta afternoon gold in the backyard, and her daughter sat beside her. And outside, Junho was on the grass with the twins, and Marcus had apparently conceded the rules of the game entirely, and was now playing it on whatever terms Amara had set. And the baby kicked twice, in quick succession, as if registering the noise and the warmth and the presence of all these people who were going to love it. Gloria put her hand on her stomach. Hello, she said quietly. To no one and everyone. Just hello. The OB appointment was on a Wednesday. Lorraine drove. She had been driving Gloria to every appointment since the Saturday she had arrived with the Moscato and the verdict and the I told you to stop saying I know, and the driving had become its own ritual. Lorraine at the door at 8:15, coffee already made. the specific silence of a woman who had learned that some mornings Gloria needed the silence more than the conversation and had adjusted without being asked. This was love in its most practical form, not the announced kind, the kind that showed up at 8:15 with coffee and knew when to be quiet. Junho met them in the parking lot. He was already there when they pulled in, leaning against the Hyundai in the November morning cold, with his hands in the pockets of his dark coat and his breath making small clouds in the Alabama air. He had driven separately because he had a session at the studio that ended at 8 and had come directly from it, his hair slightly disheveled from the headphones, his white Oxford shirt visible at the collar of the coat, the thin black cord bracelet on his wrist. Lorraine pulled into the space beside him. She looked at him through the windshield for a moment before she turned off the engine. Then she said to Gloria, without turning, "He was here before us." "I see that," Gloria said. "His session ended at 8, Lorraine said. "This appointment is at 8:30. "He drove straight here, Lorraine. "I'm noting it," Lorraine said. "Not making a thing of it. Just noting it." She turned off the engine. They got out. Junho straightened when he saw them. He looked at Gloria the way he always looked at her when he had not seen her for more than a day. The specific looking of a man who is checking that the person he loves is still the same person he left, which was not doubt, but the opposite of doubt, the reassurance of confirmed presence. His dark eyes moved to her stomach, which at 8 months was unmistakable in every piece of clothing she owned, and something in his face settled the way it always settled when he saw her. "Good session?" she asked. He fell into step beside her. String quartet from Nashville. They're recording a crossover album. Traditional Korean instruments and Western strings. He paused. "It sounds like what the world would sound like if it stopped arguing for a few minutes." Gloria looked at him. "That's poetic for 8 in the morning. I've been up since 5, he said. "Things get poetic." Lorraine made a sound. Not quite a laugh, not quite approval. The sound she made when something had surprised her into almost doing both. They went inside. The waiting room was exactly as it had always been. The terracotta walls, the small fountain, the magazines that were actually current. Gloria had sat in this room so many times in the past 5 months that she had a chair she thought of as hers. The one by the window where the light came in at the right angle in the morning, and the fountain sound was close enough to be calming, but not so close as to be insistent. She sat in it. Junho sat beside her. Lorraine sat on her other side and picked up an Essence magazine and did not read it, which meant she was paying attention to everything. The 3 of them in the waiting room. Gloria looked at them. Lorraine to her left with her gold cross and her Essence magazine and her 34 years of watching too closely and her jollof rice and her "you can come too." And Junho to her right with his studio disheveled hair and his string quartet story and his thin black cord bracelet and his "I notice everything you asked me to." 2 people who had arrived at this waiting room from completely different directions and were both here because they loved her and had chosen to keep showing up regardless of what the showing up cost them. She felt the baby move. A slow, full roll, the whole body movement of a baby who was running out of room and knew it. 8 months. The size of a pumpkin according to the app she had downloaded in Rome and still had not told anyone about. She put her hand on her stomach. Junho put his hand over hers without looking up from his phone. Just covered it. Both their hands on her stomach in the terracotta waiting room while Lorraine did not read her Essence magazine and the fountain made its creak sound in the corner. Lorraine looked at their hands. She said nothing. She turned a page of the magazine she was not reading. When Dr. Adeyemi called them in, she looked at the 3 of them without visible surprise, which was its own kind of grace. They arranged themselves in the small examination room. Gloria on the table in the paper gown with her feet dangling. Lorraine in the chair she had claimed since the second appointment. Junho standing near the window with his coat over his arm, because there was not a second chair, and he had not asked for one and would not ask for one. He would stand. He had been standing in things for months. He was good at it now. Dr. Adeyemi moved through the standard checks with the efficient warmth that was her particular gift. Blood pressure, weight, measurements, the practice routine of a doctor who had seen 8 months of this particular pregnancy and had been quietly relieved at every appointment that the numbers kept cooperating with what they all needed them to do. Then she pressed the Doppler to Gloria's stomach, and the room filled with a heartbeat. It was different from the first time. The first time it had been rapid and insistent and shocking, the sound of something running very hard toward a life it was determined to live. This time, it was deeper, stronger. The heartbeat of a baby who had been running for 8 months and had not slowed down and was now close enough to the finish line that the sound of it carried a different weight. Not just, "I am here, I am coming." Lorraine pressed her lips together. Her hand found Gloria's arm the way it had found it in the dim ultrasound room 6 months ago. The same grip, the same instinct. Junho was very still by the window. His coat was in both his hands, his knuckles slightly white around the fabric, the thin black cord bracelet visible. His dark eyes were on the monitor. His jaw was soft. He was not performing the emotion. He was inside it. Dr. Adeyemi said, strong, consistent, right where we want to be. She turned the monitor so Gloria could see. The baby on the screen was no longer the comma of the first ultrasound, no longer the lime, no longer the peach. It was a baby. A full, rounded presence on the screen, with a profile that was already specific. The curve of a forehead, the shape of a nose, the particular weight of a person who was about to exist in the world and had been practicing existing for 8 months in the only room it knew. "How are we looking for the delivery?" Junho asked from the window. Quietly, the voice of a man who has been holding a question for weeks and has chosen this room and this moment to ask it. Dr. Adeyemi looked at him with the even attention she gave everyone. "Given your history and the classification, I want to be clear about what we are planning for." She said it to Gloria directly. "We are planning for a hospital delivery. I want you checked in at the first sign of labor, not at home waiting. I want you in this building where I can see what is happening in real time." She paused. "The baby is in a good position. Your numbers have been cooperating beautifully. You are not a young woman having a first baby, and your body knows what it is doing. But I want you close." "Close," Gloria said. "Close, doctor." Adeyemi confirmed, first sign, not wait and see, first sign. Gloria nodded. Dr. Adeyemi looked at Junho. "Can you make sure that happens?" He met her eyes. "Yes, good." She looked at Lorraine. "Both of you." Lorraine put down the Essence magazine she had brought in from the waiting room and was still not reading. "I have been trying to make things happen with this woman for 34 years, she said. "I will do my best." Dr. Adeyemi almost smiled. "Good enough." After the appointment, they stood in the parking lot in the November cold. The three of them, the Alabama sky pale and high above them, and their breath-making clouds. Nobody moved toward their cars immediately. Lorraine looked at Junho. She said, "You were here before us." "I know," he said. "Your session ended at 8. Yes, this appointment was at 8:30. "Lorraine," Gloria said, "I'm asking him a question." Lorraine said. She looked at Junho. "Why didn't you go home first? Change your shirt. Get breakfast. You had 30 minutes. He looked at Lorraine. "Because 30 minutes wasn't enough time to go home and come back, and if I was late, I would have been late to this, and I wasn't going to be late to this." Lorraine looked at him for a long moment. The gold cross at her collarbone caught the pale November light. Then she said, "My sister's church makes a very good jollof rice. Better than mine, though I'll deny I said that. She has a baby shower committee." She paused. "I've been thinking about asking them." Gloria stared at her. Junho stared at her. Lorraine picked up her car keys. "I'm going to ask them," she said, as if the decision had just been made and was now final. She looked at Gloria. "Don't make a thing of it." She looked at Junho. "You either." She got in the Buick and drove away. Gloria stood in the parking lot in the November cold and watched the Buick turn out of the lot and disappear. Then she looked at Junho. He was looking at the space where the Buick had been with the expression of a man who has just been given something he did not expect and is not sure yet what to do with it. She just offered to throw us a baby shower, he said. Yes, Gloria said. With her sister's church. Yes, he looked at Gloria. That's... I know, she said. Is that a big deal? She looked at him. Lorraine has never offered to involve her sister's church in anything in my life. Not my retirement, not my divorce, not Kevin's graduation. She paused. Her sister's church is where Lorraine keeps the things that matter most to her. She looked at the space where the Buick had been. That's everything. Junho was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm going to cry in this parking lot. You absolutely are not, Gloria said. He pressed his lips together. He was not going to cry. His eyes were bright, and his jaw was working, and he was not going to cry in the parking lot of Dr. Adeyemi's office in Huntsville, Alabama, at 8:45 in the morning, after a string quartet session and a Doppler heartbeat and Lorraine offering her sister's church, he was almost not going to cry. Gloria put her hand on his arm. He put his hand over hers. 6 weeks, she said. 6 weeks, he said. They stood in the parking lot in the November cold with their breath-making clouds and the pale Alabama sky above them. And 6 weeks between now and February 14th, and the baby running hard toward the finish line, and everyone who loved them running alongside. Kevin came to the kitchen table on a Friday evening 3 weeks later. He drove up from Birmingham after work, arriving at 6 with takeout from the Korean place on University Drive that he had texted Gloria about at 4, asking if that was okay. And she had said yes, and felt the specific warmth of a son who had taken notes. He and Junho arrived within 10 minutes of each other, Kevin with the takeout and Junho with the drinks. And the kitchen smelled like tteokbokki and japchae and the December Alabama cold coming through the gap under the back door that Gloria had been meaning to fix for 3 years. They sat at the round oak table. The legal pad was not on it tonight. The ceiling fan turned. The junk drawer was closed, and had been closed, and contained nothing that needed to be buried. Kevin put the food on the table and looked at Junho the way he had looked at the ultrasound photograph Gloria had shown him on the closed. Saturday he came, completely, surrounding it with both hands metaphorically, taking it in fully before responding. Junho met his eyes the way he had learned to meet the eyes of everyone in this family, without performance, without filling the space, just present. Gloria sat between them and did not mediate. Kevin said, "You work in sound." "Yes," Junho said, "recording and production, Cummings Research Park." Kevin nodded. He served himself rice the way Marcus had at Denise's table, without being asked, a full plate. The instinct of a man who has been raised to feed himself without ceremony. He said, "My mother told me about your father, the record collection, the space between the notes." "Yes," Junho said. "My grandfather had a record collection," Kevin said. "Jazz, mostly." He used to say the same thing. He paused. Not the notes, the space. He looked at Junho. Junho looked at him. Something passed between them across the tteokbokki and the japchae and the December cold, the specific current of two people who have just discovered an unexpected point of contact and are deciding what to do with it. Gloria looked at her rice. Kevin said, "She's been tired for a long time. I know." Junho said, "She doesn't let people see it." "I know that too. How did you see it?" Junho thought about it. "She was reading a book about finding purpose in the second half of life when I met her." In the biography section of the public library, he paused. "A woman who is not tired doesn't need a book about purpose. She already has it." He looked at Kevin. "She was looking for the thing that made the carrying worth it. I just happened to be in the library." Kevin was quiet for a long time. He ate his rice with both hands around the bowl, the lifelong habit. The ceiling fan turned. Outside on Oakwood Avenue, the December dark pressed against the windows. Then Kevin said, "If she asks you to do something, do it. Don't wait for the second ask. She only asks once, and if you make her ask twice, she'll stop asking and do it herself, and then you've lost something you won't get back." Gloria looked up from her rice. Junho looked at Kevin. "I know," he said. "And when she says she's fine, she's not fine. She's never fine when she says she's fine. She's managing." Kevin held his gaze. "Learn the difference." "I've been learning it," Junho said. "She's been teaching me." Kevin looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at Gloria. "He's been teaching you too, hasn't he?" It was not a question. "Yes," Gloria said. Kevin nodded. He picked up the japchae. He served some onto Junho's plate without asking. Junho looked at the japchae on his plate. He looked at Kevin. Kevin was already eating. Gloria watched her son serve food onto her boyfriend's plate without ceremony and without acknowledgement, and thought about the space between the notes, about how the music lives not in the sound but in the silence around it, about a grandfather's record collection and a father's record collection, and a baby who would grow up with both those stories in its blood without knowing it, the way children carry things that were true before they were born. After dinner, Kevin helped clean up. The three of them at the sink, Kevin washing, Junho drying, Gloria putting away, and she thought of Park Murray and Junho in the Huntsville apartment kitchen and thought, this is how families are built. Not in the announced moments, in the sink moments, in the who washes and who dries and who puts away without being told. Kevin left at 9. He shook Junho's hand at the door, not the social handshake, the real one, both hands engaged, a grip that said, I am giving you something I don't give casually, and you should know the weight of it. He hugged Gloria on the porch. She held him. Before he got in his car, he said, February 14th. Yes, she said. I'll be here, he said. I don't care what meeting I have. She watched his car pull out of the driveway and disappear into the December dark and thought about the morning he was born, 35 years ago, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, screaming like the world owed him an apology. The weight of him in her arms, I would burn this whole city down for you. She went inside. Junho was at the kitchen table. He had the legal pad in front of him, not reading it, just sitting with it, his hands flat on the table on either side of it, looking at the 10 lines she had written across the months since June. She sat across from him. He looked at her. Kevin gave me the japchae, he said. I saw. He didn't say anything. He just put it on my plate. That's Kevin, Gloria said. He doesn't announce things. He just does them. Junho looked at the legal pad. He said, Your family is. She waited. He said, I didn't know a family could be like this. My family is. We love each other, but we do it very quietly, from a distance. We call and we send food across oceans, and we don't say the thing directly. He paused. Your family says the thing. Kevin drove 4 hours and said the thing. Denise cried and said the thing. Lorraine keeps saying the thing every time she looks at me like she's still deciding, and then does something that means she's already decided. He looked at her. Even you say the thing. You made me say the thing. You were already going to say it, Gloria said. I just didn't let you hide it. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, My father would have loved you. She looked at him. The December cold outside the window. The ceiling fan. The legal pad between them with its 10 lines in blue ballpoint ink. Tell me about him, she said. And Junho talked. He talked about his father the way he talked about sound, with precision and with love, the way you talk about something you understand completely and miss completely simultaneously. He talked about the record collection, about Saturday mornings in Seoul with the jazz playing and his father saying, listen, not to the notes, to the space. He talked about the way his father laughed, short and surprised, the same laugh Junho had, the laugh that got surprised out of him before he could manage it. He talked about the day his father got sick and the way the apartment had felt different afterward, quieter in the wrong way, the kind of quiet that is not an open field but an absence. Gloria listened. She did not try to fix it or reframe it or make it better. She listened the way she had learned to listen in 41 years of classrooms, the way you listen when the person speaking needs the listening more than they need the response. Complete, without announcement. When he finished, they sat in the kitchen quiet for a long time. The December night outside, the ceiling fan. Two people at a kitchen table in Huntsville, Alabama, who had found each other in the biography section of a public library and had made a mess of things and had told the true things and had been to Rome and had sat across from a mother who asked the right question and had gotten on the floor with twins and had learned the difference between fine and not fine, and were sitting now in a kitchen that smelled like japchae and December and the particular ordinary warmth of a life that had decided to expand. "Thank you," Junho said. "For what?" "For asking." She reached across the table and put her hand over his, her dark brown hand over his lighter one, the bare ring finger, the thin black cord bracelet. 3 generations of the same skin implied in the room in the shape of the baby that was coming in 5 weeks. She did not say anything, neither did he. Sometimes the space between the notes is enough. The proposal happened on a Tuesday. Not because Tuesday was significant. Tuesdays had been significant once, the Wednesday afternoons reconfigured, the secret contained in the container of a midweek visit. But that was before Rome, and before the legal pad, and before the brochure in the bin, and now Tuesday was just Tuesday, an ordinary December evening. Gloria, 8.5 months pregnant and large and uncomfortable in the way that the final weeks of pregnancy are uncomfortable, the way that makes you understand why women say enough, the body's own argument for its conclusion. She was trying to put on her shoes. This was the scene. Not a restaurant, not a ring box pulled from a pocket in a practice moment. Gloria Hayes, sitting on the edge of her bed at 6:30 in the evening, trying to put on her shoes, which at 8.5 months pregnant was an act of such physical complexity that it had become its own small daily indignity. And Junho coming into the bedroom doorway and seeing her and coming to kneel in front of her and putting her shoes on for her the way he had been doing for 3 weeks without being asked, the way he had noticed without her asking and begun without announcement. That was not the proposal. That was the before. The proposal happened because of what she said when he was putting on her shoes. She said, "You know you don't have to do this." He looked up from her feet. "Do what?" "Any of it." She said it to the window, not to him. The shoes, the appointments, the dinners, the family, all of it. "You're 30 years old. You could." He stopped. She felt him stop. The hands on her feet going still. The particular stillness that was not calm but the opposite of calm, the stillness of a man who has heard something that requires him to be very careful about what he says next. She had not planned to say it. It had arrived the way the true things arrived, unbidden, from the place beneath the management. It was 2 in the morning and she had been lying awake listening to the baby and to Junho sleeping and thinking about February 14th and what came after February 14th. The years of it, the decades of it, the mathematics of a 60-year-old woman and a 30-year-old man raising a child together, and what that math produced when you ran it forward. When the child was 10, she would be 70. When the child was 20, she would be 80. When the child was 30, Junho would be 60, and she would be 90 if she was lucky. She had been lying awake doing this math for 3 weeks, and tonight it had come out of her mouth before she could stop. You could what?" he said. His voice was very quiet. "Be free," she said. "Of all of this?" "Of the appointments, and the family dinners, and the baby at 2 in the morning, and a 60-year-old woman who—" He stood up. She had not expected him to stand up. She had expected him to finish putting on her shoe and say something gentle and reassuring, and she would feel managed, and they would go to dinner, and the thought would go back to the place beneath the management where it had been living. For 3 weeks, he stood up, and he was not gentle. "Gloria," he said. She looked at him. He was standing in front of her with one of her shoes still in his hand and his jaw set with a hardness she had seen exactly once before, in a Roman alley when she had said, "I'm fine," and he had said, "We're going back." Not anger, something more focused than anger. The face of a man who has heard something that is not true and is not going to let it stand. "You don't get to do that," he said. "I'm just saying, you don't get to." He set the shoe down on the bed. "You don't get to tell me what I could be free of as if I have been trapped." As if this, he stopped. Start it again. I got on a plane, Gloria. I sat across from your best friend and let her cross-examine me. I sat across from your daughter and her husband and got on the floor with your grandchildren and looked up their names before I came. I sat across from my mother and told her everything and asked for her blessing and let her ask the hardest question, and I stood in your answer when she asked it. He looked at her. I called my father's name when Kevin talked about his grandfather's record collection, and it came out before I could stop it, and your son looked at me and put food on my plate, and that cost me something, Gloria. That cost me something I didn't know I was still protecting. She was very still. He said, I am not here because I have to be. I am not staying because the baby is coming, and it's the right thing to do. I am staying because you are the whole building, and I am not interested in any other building. He paused. And I need you to stop doing the math. What math? The age math. He looked at her directly. I can see you doing it. I've been watching you do it for 3 weeks. You go somewhere behind your eyes at 2 a.m. and you come back different, and I know what you're calculating. He shook his head. Stop. I'm not interested in the math. I'm interested in the years, whatever number of them we get. She looked at him. Her eyes were wet. She had not planned to cry tonight either. How many years do you think that is? She asked. She said it flat, not cruelty, the true question. He looked at her. Enough, he said. And if it's not enough, it will still have been worth it. He paused. I would rather have 10 years of this than 50 years of anything else. She held his gaze for a long time. The bedroom was quiet. The ceiling fan was not turning in here, the December cold making it unnecessary. And the stillness of the room was different from the kitchen stillness. More interior, more final. Then he picked up her shoe from the bed. He knelt back down in front of her. He put the shoe on her foot with the same focused attention he gave to everything. The sound sessions, the cobblestone routes, the names of children he had not yet met. Then he did not stand up. He stayed kneeling. He looked at her from that position, from the floor, from the posture she had first seen him in on the living room floor the night she said, I'm pregnant and the world did not end. He said, I don't have a ring. She stared at him. I've been thinking about this for 2 months, and I don't have a ring because every time I went to look for one, it felt wrong to choose it without you there. He paused. Which is probably not how proposals work, Junho. I know it's not how proposals work. His voice was steady, but his hands were not entirely steady on her feet. I also know that I am 30 years old and you are 60, and the math is the math, and I am not interested in the math. He looked up at her. I am interested in you, in the specific, difficult, expensive, extraordinary you, in the woman who said the true thing on a Roman balcony and threw away the brochure and sat across from my mother and took the extra kimchi. He paused. In the woman who is sitting on this bed doing math at 8.5 months pregnant because she loves me enough to worry about what the math costs me. He held her gaze. Marry me. Not because of the baby. Not because it's the right thing. Because I want to wake up in this house and drive to this hospital and sit in this kitchen and wash these dishes and get on the floor with these children for whatever number of years we get. The bedroom was completely still. Outside on Oakwood Avenue, the December dark pressed against the windows with its cold and its quiet. The baby moved, the slow, full roll of a baby almost out of room, almost ready, almost here. Gloria looked at this man. This 30-year-old Korean man kneeling on her bedroom floor in December, with one of her shoes in his hand and his eyes wet and his voice steady, and the thin black cord bracelet on his wrist and his father's laugh somewhere in the shape of his face, and his mother's question somewhere in the shape of his love. She thought about the legal pad, about the 10 lines, about the 7th line written larger and darker than the rest. I want it, the most dangerous thing she had written in her life. She thought about Evelyn in the sunroom. You gotta decide. She thought about Lorraine across the kitchen table. Then you're a fool. And I love you. She thought about Park Mi-rae's hand over hers. Brief, a breath, I received this. She thought about Kevin's hands on the teacup, both hands. surrounding it. You're my mother, and you were wrong about what I would think. She thought about Denise in the kitchen in Decatur. He makes you less tired, Mama. She thought about Rome, the cobblestone alley, the trattoria, the balcony. I love you said as a dependent clause, and then said deliberately, and the city below not caring at all. She thought about the baby. 5 weeks, February 14th. The heartbeat she had heard in a dim room with Lorraine's hand on her arm, and the comma on the screen that had become a profile and would become a person and was already a person, already specific, already theirs. She said, I need you to understand something first. He waited. I have been married before, she said. I know what a marriage costs. I know what it costs when it works, and I know what it costs when it stops working. I know the specific exhaustion of a person who has given everything to a marriage and watched it divide itself into 2 separate silences and come out the other side with a house she fought for and 2 children she raised alone and 12 years of quiet that was sometimes a prison and sometimes an open field. She looked at him. I am not interested in a marriage that performs. I am not interested in a marriage that becomes infrastructure. I am not interested in the managed version of any of this. I know, he said. I'm going to need you to say true things, she said. Always. Even when the true things are hard. Especially when they are hard. I know. And I am going to need you to not let me be invisible. Ever. Not to you, not to myself. If I start disappearing into the managing you pull me back, I know that too, he said. You asked me in Rome. I've been doing it. She looked at him. I'm going to be 70 when this baby is 10. I know the math, Gloria. I'm going to be Gloria. He held her gaze. I know the math. I don't care about the math. I care about the years. He paused. Say yes. She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, yes. Not a performance. Not a clean, uncomplicated yes. The yes of a woman who has looked at the cliff and the canyon below it, and the other side that she cannot guarantee she will reach and has decided to jump anyway because she has been standing at cliff edges her whole life, and the only thing she knows for certain is that the not jumping costs more than the jumping. Yes, she said again, because it was worth saying twice. He put his forehead against her knees the way he had done in the living room a year ago, and she put her hand on the back of his head the way she had done then, and they stayed like that in the December bedroom with her shoes on and his hands on her feet, and the baby moving slow and full between them, all 3 of them in the same moment, the same breath, the same small bedroom in Huntsville, Alabama, that had held more truth in the past year than most rooms hold in a lifetime. Then he looked up. His eyes were wet. He said, I'm going to get you a ring. I know, she said. You should choose it, he said. I meant what I said. It felt wrong to choose it without you. She looked at him. Next week, she said. Before the baby comes. Next week, he confirmed. He stood up. She stood up. The 8.5 months choreography, the stages, the hand. He offered his hand and she took it and stood. And he did not let go of it after she was standing, just held it the way he held things he did not want to put down. They went to dinner. The Korean place on University Drive, the one he had been going to since before she knew him, the one where the ajumma behind the counter had stopped giving them looks 6 months ago and had started just putting the extra kimchi on the table without being asked, which was its own kind of acceptance. The kind that arrives not with words, but with kimchi, which is perhaps the best kind. They ate. They talked about nothing important. The baby, the ring, the hospital bag that was packed and by the door, the twins' Christmas present they had not yet bought, the string quartet from Nashville. Whether jerk chicken or japchae would be at the baby shower, Lorraine's sister's church committee was apparently already planning with the efficiency of women who had been waiting for something to celebrate. Gloria ate. Everything on her plate. Junho watched her do it with the quiet satisfaction of a man who had been doing the one specific right thing for 1.5 years and had finally stopped needing to be thanked for it. After dinner, they drove home on the University Drive route, past the Arsenal, past the Space Museum, past the cotton fields that were bare and brown in December and would be green again by the time the baby was old enough to notice them. The Alabama night was cold and clear, and the stars were out over Huntsville with the particular brightness of December stars in the South, which have always been there and will keep being there and find the complicated human lives beneath them no less worth witnessing. At the house, she got out of the car and stood in the driveway for a moment and looked up at the stars and thought about everything the year had been. The bathtub and the 2 pink lines, the porch where he said no, the doctor's office where her feet dangled, Evelyn's sunroom, the kitchen table where she wrote, "I want it," Rome, the cobblestone alley, the balcony, the return to Huntsville, Lorraine and the jollof rice, Park Murray and the kimchi and the untranslatable yes, Kevin driving 4 hours on a Saturday, Denise saying okay in a kitchen in Decatur, the OB waiting room with 2 people who loved her on either side, the bedroom floor and the proposal that arrived through the thing that was trying to be fear and was actually the deepest form of love she knew, the love that worries about the cost to the other person before it worries about itself. She looked at the stars. She thought about the legal pad inside on the kitchen table, the 10 lines. There needed to be more. She went inside, sat at the kitchen table, picked up the pen. She stood in the driveway for a moment after Jun-ho went inside. The December stars were out over Huntsville with the particular brightness of winter stars in the South, the kind that have always been there and will keep being there, and find the complicated human lives beneath them no less worth witnessing. She looked up at them and let the year land on her the way she had learned to let things land, not managing it, not filing it away, just standing in it and letting it be the full weight of what it was. The year, the bathtub, and the 2 pink lines, the porch where he said no, the doctor's office where her feet dangled, and doctor. Adeyemi named her psychology before she could hide behind it. Evelyn's sunroom, and the grip that was stronger than it should have been, and the question that dementia could not reach. The kitchen table where she wrote, "I want it" in darker ink than everything else. Rome and the cobblestone alley, and the balcony and "I love you" said as a dependent clause. Lorraine and the jollof rice and the fool and the love. Park Murray and the hand and the untranslatable yes. Kevin driving 4 hours on a Saturday without calling. Denise saying okay in a kitchen in Decatur. The OB waiting room with 2 people who loved her on either side and the heartbeat that said, "I am coming." And tonight, the bedroom floor and the proposal that arrived through the thing that had been trying to be fear and was actually love. The specific love of a woman who had spent 60 years managing other people's costs and had finally, for the first time, been undone by her own. She stood in the driveway and let it all land. Then she went inside. Jun-ho was at the kitchen table. He had changed into the gray hoodie. He had the legal pad in front of him, and he was not reading it, but sitting with it the way she sat with things that mattered, completely, surrounding it. His hands were flat on the table on either side of the pad, and he was looking at the 10 lines she had written since June, and his face was doing something she had not seen it do before. Not the careful, not the open. Something older and quieter than both. She sat across from him, not beside, across, the way they had always sat in this kitchen when the true things were on the table. He looked up, she picked up the pen. She wrote the 11th line, 11. I said yes, not because it was easy, because it was true. She underlined it once, pushed the pad toward him. He read it. His mouth curved in the way it curved when something moved him and he was not going to perform the moving. Then he said, I want to tell you something. She looked at him. I've been doing the math too, he said. She stilled. Not the age math. His dark eyes were steady on hers. A different math. He paused. I've been calculating what I would lose if you said no, not what I would be free of. What I would lose. He looked at the legal pad. I made a list, in my head, not on paper, just in my head the way you make lists. He paused. It was a very long list. Gloria looked at him across the kitchen table. The ceiling fan turning. The December cold outside the window. the legal pad between them with its 11 lines. "What was on it?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "The coffee before I knock." He paused. "The way you say okay and mean something different every time. The extra kimchi. The cobblestone routes. The way you look at things like you're deciding whether they're true." He paused again. "My father's name coming out at your son's table before I could stop it." He held her gaze. "The way you listened when I talked about him tonight, like you were making room for him. In here." He touched the edge of the legal pad. "In whatever this is." Gloria's eyes were wet. She had not planned that either. She had been doing so well. "Jun-ho," she said. "I'm not finished," he said. He said it gently but completely. Not gentle management. Complete honesty. "I've been doing the math for 2 months, and every time I run it, the same thing comes out." He looked at her. "There is no version of the math where losing you is the better outcome. Not the age version. Not the freedom version. Not any version." He paused. "So when you said tonight that I could be free?" He shook his head. "There is no free that is better than this. There is only this or the absence of this. And the absence of this is the thing I'm afraid of. Not the years, not the math, the absence." The kitchen was very still. Gloria looked at this man. Across the kitchen table in the December quiet, with the legal pad between them, and the 11 lines in blue ballpoint ink, and the gray hoodie, and the thin black cord bracelet, and the father's laugh somewhere in the shape of his face, and his mother's question somewhere in the shape of his love. She thought about the absence. She had lived in the absence. 12 years of quiet on Oakwood Avenue that was sometimes a prison. 41 years of giving herself away in small pieces. The infrastructure, the invisible. The woman who had been partially known by everyone and fully known by no one until a Thursday afternoon in a public library when a 30-year-old Korean man had said, "You look like you already know everything in that book," and she had said, "That's the most elaborate way anyone's ever called me old," and something had opened in her that she had not known was closed. The absence, she thought. "I know the absence. I lived in it for years." She reached across the table and took his hand, his lighter hand in her dark one, the bare ring finger, the thin black cord bracelet. "Next week," she said, "we choose the ring together." He nodded. "And Jun-ho." Stop doing the math." She held his gaze. "I know the absence too, and this is better." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "That's the truest thing you've ever said to me." "I know," she said. "I've been working up to it." He almost laughed. The almost laugh, the one that surprised him before it arrived. Then it arrived, the real one, the belly one, short and warm in the December kitchen, and she felt it land in her chest the way it always landed. The specific pleasure of making this man laugh when he wasn't expecting to. She picked up the pen. She added a 12th line. 12! The absence is the thing I was afraid of, not the years. Not the math, the absence. I know it. I'm not going back to it. She underlined it twice, the way she had underlined the 8th line, the urgency underline. The "this" is the one that matters underline. She put the pen down. The baby moved. The slow, full roll, the whole body shifting. The running out of room movement of something almost ready. Almost, she thought. Almost. The labor started on a Sunday, not February 14th, February 9th, 5 days early, which was either the baby's own opinion about due dates or the universe's final reminder that nothing in this story had arrived on schedule and there was no reason to start now. It started quietly, the way the true things always started in Gloria's life, not announced, not dramatic, just present. She woke at 4 in the morning and lay still for a moment and thought, this is different. Not the 2 a.m. kicks, not the Braxton Hicks that had been practicing the real thing for 3 weeks. This was different the way the 2 pink lines had been different, the way the heartbeat on the monitor had been different, the body knowing before the mind had caught up, the deep animal certainty of a woman who had done this twice before and remembered. She lay still for a moment longer. The bedroom was dark and quiet. Junho was asleep beside her, on his side facing her, the way he slept, his dark hair against the pillow, and his face soft with the specific softness of a person who has nothing to perform in sleep. The thin black cord bracelet on his wrist, his breathing even and slow. She looked at him for a moment. She thought, I am about to change your life. Then she thought, I already did. 5 months ago on the living room floor. This is just the next part. She put her hand on his shoulder, Junho. He was awake immediately. Not the groggy surfacing of a deep sleeper. The immediate, complete wakefulness of a man who had been sleeping lightly for 5 weeks, waiting for exactly this. His eyes opened and found her face and read it in the dark the way he read everything she did not say out loud. He said, Now? She said, Now. He sat up. He was already reaching for his phone, doctor. Adeyemi's number, the hospital number, the numbers he had put in a specific folder 3 weeks ago and labeled in a way that had made her laugh when she saw it. The folder was called Everything. That's what he had named it. Everything. She sat on the edge of the bed and breathed through the first contraction and thought about the legal pad on the kitchen table with its 12 lines and the 11th line that said, I said yes, not because it was easy, because it was true. And the 12th line that said, I know the absence, I am not going back to it, and she thought there should be a 13th. Later, Junho was on the phone with Dr. Adeyemi's service. She could hear his voice from the bathroom where he had gone, low and precise, the sound engineer's voice, the voice that knew how to communicate important information cleanly and without panic. She heard him say 8 months and first sign, and we're coming now, and she heard the steadiness in it and thought, this is the man who looked up their names before he came. This is the man who drove straight from the studio to the parking lot. This is the man who said, the absence is the thing I'm afraid of. This is the man. She called Lorraine first. Lorraine answered on the first ring. 4 a.m, and she answered on the first ring because she had told Gloria 3 weeks ago that she was sleeping with her phone on the pillow until February 14th and had apparently extended the policy to cover 5 days. Early. It's time, Gloria said. I'm already up, Lorraine said. I put the coffee on an hour ago. I had a feeling. Gloria almost laughed. Of course you did. I'll meet you there. Lorraine paused. Gloria, you're going to be magnificent. The word landed in the 4 a.m. dark like the only right word. Not fine. Not okay. Not you'll be great. Magnificent. Lorraine's word, the word of a woman who had been watching Gloria for 34 years and had decided, finally, completely, that magnificent was the accurate one. I know, Gloria said. She said it the new way, the way she had been learning to say it, not as a burial, not as a management, but as the true thing. I know. She hung up and called Denise. Denise answered on the second ring, her voice already awake because Denise had also been sleeping lightly for 5 weeks in Atlanta, the firstborn's vigil. The specific alertness of a daughter who had decided to be present and had been present even from 4 hours away. Mama, it's time, baby. Denise made a sound. The sound she made when something was too large for words and words came anyway. Oh, Mama. She paused. We're coming. Denise, you don't have to drive 4 hours at 4 a.m. We're already packed, Mama. We've been packed for 2 weeks. Marcus has the twins' bags in the car. She paused. We're coming. Gloria held the phone and felt the warmth of it. The image of Marcus packing twin bags 2 weeks ago in the Decatur mudroom under the labeled hooks, the specific love of a son-in-law who packed bags without being asked because his wife loved her mother, and that was reason enough. Drive safe, she said. Always, Denise said. She paused. Mama, tell him we said thank you for looking up their names. Gloria closed her eyes. I will, she said. She called Kevin. Kevin answered on the first ring. He said, I'm in the car. Before she could say a word, I'm already in the car. I've been in the car for 20 minutes. I had a feeling at 3:40. She shook her head slowly. You and Lorraine. She taught me, he said. She calls it maternal intuition. I call it paying attention. He paused. 4 hours, Mama. I'll be there. She hung up. She sat on the edge of the bed and breathed through another contraction and thought about all of them. Kevin in his car on the Birmingham highway at 4 in the morning. Denise and Marcus and the twins somewhere in the Decatur dark getting into a packed car that had been waiting for 2 weeks. Lorraine with her coffee already made and her gold cross and her 34 years of watching. And somewhere in Seoul, Park Mi-rae, who had woken at 5 a.m. every morning since she arrived in Huntsville and had never stopped waking at 5 a.m. when she went home. The habit of a woman who lived across an ocean from her son and wanted to be awake at the hour when things might happen. Gloria would call her after the everything. She would call her and say Mi-rae, and then say the name of the baby, and Park Mi-rae would cry and laugh and say something in Korean that Junho would translate, and the translation would not be entirely accurate, and that would be exactly right. Junho came out of the bathroom. He was dressed. He had the hospital bag from the hallway, the one that had been packed in by the door for 3 weeks, and he had her coat over his arm and her shoes in his hand, the ones he had been putting on for her since the 8th month, the ones he had been kneeling for. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her. He put on her shoes, the same focused attention, the same care. The same hands that had been learning the specific shape of her for a year and a half and had not stopped learning. She looked at the top of his dark head while he worked. The silver threads in her natural hair catching the bedside light, the bare ring finger on her left hand, no longer bare. The ring they had chosen together at the jeweler on Holmes Avenue on a Wednesday afternoon, a simple gold band with a single dark blue sapphire that was exactly the color of the sea at night, the color Park Mi-rae had chosen from a Seoul apartment as her favorite, the color that had been texted to Gloria in November as a small true thing and had become the stone on her finger, the circle completing in a way that nobody had planned, and that was therefore exactly right. She looked at the ring on her finger now. Dark blue, the sea at night, the color that holds things. Junho finished with her shoes. He looked up, his dark eyes in the bedside light, his angular jaw, the few strands of dark hair fallen over his forehead, the thin black cord bracelet on his wrist, the face of a man who was 30 years old and was about to become a father and was frightened and ready simultaneously. The way you are when you have been standing in things long enough to know that standing in them is the only way through. Ready? He said. She looked at him. She thought about the bathtub and the 2 pink lines. She thought about the porch where he said no. She thought about the legal pad with its 12 lines, and the 12th line and the absence and the choice. She thought about Rome and Lorraine and Park Mi-rae and Kevin and Denise and the twins and the baby shower Lorraine's sister's church committee had thrown in January with more jollof rice than 20 people could eat and more. Korean pear tarts than anyone had planned for, and Park Mi-rae flying back from Seoul for it. Standing in Gloria's living room in Huntsville, Alabama in January with a small smile and the navy blue blouse and the pearl earrings. Watching the room fill with the specific noise of a family assembling itself around something new. She thought about Evelyn in the sunroom. You gotta decide. She thought about the ceiling fan turning its slow circles in every room where something true had been said. She thought about the space between the notes, where the music lives. She looked at Junho. She said, I've been ready since the library. He stood. He helped her up. The stages, the hand. He did not let go of it after she was standing. They walked out of the bedroom together, through the hallway, past the kitchen where the legal pad sat on the table with its 12 lines in blue ballpoint ink, the record of a woman who had learned to write the true things down because the true things are worth keeping. Past the junk drawer that was just a junk drawer now, ordinary, unburdened. Past the recycling bin under the sink where the Amalfi Coast brochure had gone to become something else. Cardboard, eventually, pulped and remade, the way everything eventually becomes something it did not start as. Through the front door, into the Alabama February dark. The stars were still out. The Bradford pear trees on Oakwood Avenue were bare against the sky, 2 weeks from the blooming that would come when the season turned. The air was cold and clear and smelled like February in the South, which smells like the specific held breath of a world that is about to become something different. Gloria stopped on the porch. Just for a moment, just one breath, she looked at Oakwood Avenue in the February dark. The house she had fought for, the quiet that had been a prison and then an open field, the life that had decided to expand instead of contract. The woman she had become on the way to the woman she had always been, 60 years old, about to have a baby, wearing a ring the color of the sea at night, surrounded by everyone she loved, converging from their different distances toward a hospital on the south side of Huntsville where Dr. Adeyemi was already on her way in, and Lorraine had been awake for an hour with the coffee on, and Kevin was on the highway, and Denise was on the highway, and the baby was running hard toward the finish line with the same insistence it had. I've been running with since the first heartbeat in the dim examination room 6 months ago. I am here, the heartbeat had said. I am coming. She felt a contraction move through her. She breathed through it the way she had been practicing, the way Dr. Adeyemi had shown her, the way her body remembered from 35 years ago and 38 years ago, the deep animal memory of a woman who had done this before and knew how to stand in it. She stood in it. Junho's hand was in hers, steady, present. The hand of a man who had been learning to be present for a year and a half and had learned it in the specific way that matters, not through declaration, but through the accumulated small acts of noticing. The coffee before the knock, the cobblestone routes, the names looked up before the meeting, the pot washed that he did not dirty, the shoes put on every morning for 3 weeks without being asked. The contraction passed. She exhaled. She looked at Junho. He was looking at her with the expression she had first seen on a hotel bed in Rome, when she had said, "Raymond never noticed when I hadn't eaten," and something had shifted in the quality of the room. He had been looking at her that way ever since, not the way you look at something you are managing or something you are afraid of losing, the way you look at something you are choosing, every day, on purpose, with full knowledge of the cost and full acceptance of it. He was choosing her. She was choosing him. This was the whole story. This was what the brochure had been hiding, and Rome had revealed, and the legal pad had recorded, and the kitchen table had witnessed, and Lorraine had blessed in the only way Lorraine blessed things, grudgingly, completely, with jollof rice and her sister's church. She squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. "Let's go," she said. They went down the porch steps together, into the Alabama February dark, into the cold, clear air, and the bare Bradford pears, and the stars that had been there before all of this and would be there after. The second act was not ending. It was only just beginning to understand itself. And Gloria Hayes, 60 years old, wearing a ring the color of the sea at night, walking into the dark with the man she loved and the baby coming and everyone who mattered converging from their different distances, Gloria Hayes was not afraid. She was not fine, which was the truest thing. She was not fine, and she was not invisible, and she was not infrastructure, and she was not the managed version of herself, or the monument version, or the dedicated schoolteacher version, or the woman with the brochure in the junk drawer, dreaming of lemon trees and terracotta and water so blue it looked fake. She was the whole building. She had always been the whole building. She just needed someone to notice. And then she needed to learn to notice it herself. And then she needed to stop protecting herself from the people who could see it, and let them see it, and let the seeing cost her something, and let the cost be worth it. It was worth it. All of it. Every pink line and kitchen table and Roman cobblestone and Korean folk song and spoonful of kimchi and space between the notes and ceiling fan and legal pad line and junk drawer and brochure and true thing set in a room that held it. Worth it. The car was warm. The hospital was 20 minutes. The baby was coming. And Gloria Hayes, who had found a pregnancy test at 5:47 in the morning and had been standing in it ever since, pressed her palm flat on her stomach and felt the baby move one last time in the dark and thought, "Hello, I've been waiting for you. The second act begins.